No.
He does.
Really?
If it's project-based, the vouchers roll into the PHA's regular allocation and get funded using the same renewal formula that all the rest do.
I don't think it's the same thing, though. Otherwise, why change, right? I mean, all you're doing is converting more of your low rent. There's a difference.
But they're still funded with the same.
Yeah, but I don't think the same. It's a little different.
But the HAP portion is also, remember, it's like 99%.
Yes.
And the admin fees being funded, you know, at the 75, 79, 80%. For the voucher program, they count as a unit leased. And yes, they are going to be prorated down to the federal prorated level for the voucher program. So yeah, you're still going to have those. You're not going to get 100% prorated admin fees.
Now, I was going to say, the one thing I would say is that admin fees are the one thing that we really come talking about being similar at some level, which is why, you know, we really don't understand the rush to PBV at some level. So when I look at that, you know, there's a little proration difference in how these get approached. But the bottom line is this. You are stuck in the same basic model you have now, which is why we don't understand. You know, you got from me today, the reason I'm having this presentation is I don't want you always just making a decision to go to PBV because you're afraid of certain PBRA issues. If you go to PBRA, you're out of that whole thing.
And I do think when you have these project-based vouchers, you got to be a little bit careful here. You know, what was a couple years ago, sequestration came in, they hit us, we went down to 94% of HAP funding, right? And when you look at that, you're trying to determine how many units you can lease during the calendar year, right? You're trying to average your per unit cost, what do we need? And so from this, you almost have to what? First of all, block off those HAP payments as to what is needed for your project-based commitments.
Yes.
Then second, see how much funding is left over, and now determine how many units you can lease. And
how many regular vouchers you can lease.
Yeah, and you really want to track those HAP costs separate.
Yeah.
You do it
Okay,
in VMS.
see, we agree on that.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I mean, the overall funding mechanism is the same, and you have to then block off the money to meet your project-based commitment, and then the balance is going to be left over for your regular voucher program, which is going to absorb whatever, you know, you've got to absorb for the higher project-based vouchers possibly to do your regular vouchers.
But the view was to make sure you're funding your PBV vouchers at that rate. That's why I said no.
Right.
But it didn't have anything.
I'm missing I'm not interested in the tail end of the question, which is what happens to the rest of them.
Yeah, RAD or project-based, we still have that same rule. Right. We still have to look at it that way as part of the commitment first.
Right.
So I'm confused that is there a PBV-RAD and a PBV-RAD?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah.
You choose. It's one of the choices. When you get ready to go down the list, you say, do I want to be voucher or do I want to be, you know, PBRA, project-based assistance instead of a voucher?
And remember, one of the things that Les said about the other funding is that basically they're not prorated like we are on the project-based voucher or the regular voucher side.
They've never had a proration.
Yeah. That's one of the pros. They're a much stronger liability. You know, they have a lobbying group that's much more powerful. You know.
Well, when
you're going to put public housing in that pot, you're going to only ratchet up the stress on the funding. Of course, they're going to come back there and cut your funding eventually.
no, well.
There's no way you could get.
I can't ever guarantee they won't cut funding because they could, you know, the end of the world could come tomorrow, and I don't know what the hell happens.
Yeah.
I mean, their history is they're going to, in the last decade, is they're going to cut your funding because the big dog, public housing, had to be reduced to vouchers. Now you're going to shift all this public housing portfolio.
We're a long way from shifting the whole portfolio. First of all, let's get.
But you're telling us we need to do it, right?
Well, I think right now the market is saying it's more advantageous for you to do it than to stay where you are because you can't get the financing to get a building in place. And we use the leverage of the contract, whichever way, of guaranteed payment, to bring the lender in to refresh the building, right? So
Right.
we're in agreement. So now we reach out and what we say is Congress really does handle PBV-RAD differently. Now you're saying you're going to bring public housing into this. Let me tell you how it works in the vision. You don't bring public housing into it. You bring public housing users into PBV-RAD, but you've left all the public housing baggage on the side of the street. And now you've said we've put them in Section 8 housing, which is managed under a commercial model. See the basic difference in the viewpoint of the regulator who says, Congress goes, well, now we count on profit motivation, not some quasi-governmental agency, right, with bloated whatever. You can see how this goes in your mind. So we now we give it to the robber barons, you know, to run a decent project based Section 8. And that's a very different view in their mind. Wouldn't you guys agree that that vision is very different in their minds?
I think we also got to look at, Ray, you'll have to go back in memory and think about back in the asset management days when we're doing that. I believe public housing only makes up like 11 or 12% of the overall portfolio of HUD and low-income housing.
Yeah.
So you start seeing this multifamily, it's a lot bigger than public. I mean, even when public housing comes over, it's only 10%, 11% of the units, and that's with all of them coming over. So, and there's that requirement, if the private sector is ever reduced from funding, the owners are going to get out.
Capital will flee.
Yep. And then, fine, now we're going to be stuck building the units at an average TDC cost of $150,000 to $200,000 per unit, and we don't have the money for that.
So where I tell you on that vision, first of all, start with public housing numbers back out NYCHA. New York, right? So take New York out of the mix.
And Puerto Rico.
Oh, Puerto Rico.
It's bigger.
A couple of others, right?
Yeah.
And now, because they're not going to jump into these hoops all at once, even close. And so you've reduced the number of public housing units very drastically by 1 or 2 or 3 agencies, vast percentages. And now we manage the rest in a slow trickle in, and I think the net impacts are really, really small. If I had the rental policy working group analysis that showed all the breakdowns, you would see the numbers, like Ron said, are much smaller in impact than you would imagine. So, like I said, nobody guarantees anything except that you're born and you're going to die. Other than that, what do I know? All we can tell you is track record-wise, we've never had the issue and we're under pressure. Trust me, multifamily is under pressure too. But they've never had sequestration. They've never had proration. Because guess what? If you want to screw over public housing, you can screw them over. Well, I'm blunt, right? If nothing, if not blunt. But you can't screw over the entire market without having a severe backlash. That's the difference.
Unless you remember years ago when the Congress kind of went after the multifamily, and boy, they were really after the contracts. They're going to sort of dismantle it. How long did that last?
That was
that lobby group about ripped them a new one.
15-second conversation, then hell happened.
Yeah, they backed off pretty quickly.
It's a huge, much bigger political body than public housing. Donna, go ahead. Everybody seems to have a different sort of series of points of which they've chosen. So I hate to analyze, kind of get a general answer. Like I said, one told me, well, we don't want to have REAC inspections. I'm going, that's the dumbest thing I've heard this week. But it was only Monday. So other people have very good analysis. One of them, I can't remember what the fee was. He was going to maximize a certain fee. And they'd figured out the numbers. And I said, that's okay, you're doing an analysis. But so much of this is based on misconception about fear. Like I said, what I don't know.
I think what they were talking about there is the ability to get the HCV admin fee plus the management fee.
Yeah, might be. I don't know.
I've actually talked to Greg about that on the project-based voucher side. And he recognizes that that's kind of maybe a double dipping kind of thing.
Yeah, we talked about this.
And right now there's no prohibition against it. He told me that, in the future that may not be able to continue. Who knows? OIG may see it as a problem, but right now there is that, I guess you could call it loophole or something,
I mean,
I guess kind of double dip on the fee.
You're trying to also perhaps lower some of the cost related to the voucher program by transferring some of the requirements over from that side, because now the waiting list function, all of that is not related to the voucher program, it's related to this site. So perhaps some of the cost is going down along with the additional admin fees coming in. Perhaps you have a program that historically you've been under leased.
And it's not all about cost either for HUD. What happens in this process, who wins? Who wins in every case, generally? The tenant. They get better housing. I mean, the missions are fulfilled. People are living in better places. I mean, if you go to NYCHA, you want to walk through those units. You and I don't want to live there, do we, Ray?
Well, in
It's not
fairness
the
to
worst.
NYCHA, they have some nice,
They
pretty
do, but I
nice
mean,
housing. But
some of it-
I can think of some other places
Yeah.
we could.
Okay, we don't.
want.
Yeah, I've been to some of those too. But
During our stop loss review days.
everything gets, it's a rehab process generally. So,
Yeah.
is that it? Who are we pointing at?
I was just looking around seeing if there's any other questions.
Let,
Yeah. Really?
Because I've heard very little feedback from people right now in the last 6 months on where QAS is, and we know from other sources that they're busy internally. My guess is get signed up for the OIG releases too. OIG's hot on right now. What's bigger in public housing is OIG much more than QAS. I get those notices about 2 or 3 a day, and you open them up and you can almost count it. XYZ Housing Authority screwed up this, XYZ Housing, whatever. And I'm going, how many of these do they issue a day? Man, it's like 1 report or 2 reports a day, and more than half on public housing.
Yeah.
So OIG's they're out collecting
They're on
money.
the rampage.
Yeah.
If there's no other questions for you,